It was on my 40th birthday that I finally realized I had been reading the wrong book. The story of my life had been written by everyone but me. Family expectations, societal pressures, and my own fears had been holding the pen, writing chapters I never chose to live. I remember sitting in my corner office, surrounded by the trappings of what others called success. Awards on the walls, a view of the city that most would envy, and a salary that should have made me happy. Yet, there I was, feeling like a stranger in my own life. They say it takes a moment of crisis to spark transformation. For me, it wasn't a dramatic event. No health scare, no public failure. Instead, it was the quiet realization that I couldn't remember the last time I had felt truly alive. When was the last time I had done something simply because it brought me joy? When had I last followed my curiosity without wondering what others would think? The change began with a simple question. I started asking myself every morning, if this was my last chance to write this chapter of my life, what story would I want to tell? It sounds simple, doesn't it? But this question became my compass, guiding me through the biggest rewrite of my life. First, I had to acknowledge the characters in my story who weren't serving the plot. The friend who always diminished my dreams, calling them unrealistic. The partner who loved the idea of who I could be rather than who I was. The boss who saw me as a resource rather than a human being. It wasn't about villainizing them. It was about understanding that some characters are only meant to be in a few chapters, not the entire book. Then came the hardest part, facing the inner critic, that voice that had been my constant companion for 4 decades. You know the one, it speaks in absolutes. You're too old to change. You're not talented enough. What will people think? I had to learn to recognize this voice not as truth, but as fear disguised as wisdom. The rewrite began slowly. I started with small edits, 15 minutes each morning dedicated to writing, not for work, but for myself. A weekend photography class I had always been interested in, but deemed impractical. Lunch breaks spent in the park instead of at my desk. These weren't just activities, they were declarations of independence from my old narrative. The most surprising chapter came when I decided to leave my prestigious job. Not in a dramatic fashion, I didn't burn any bridges or storm out in rebellion. Instead, I crafted a thoughtful transition plan, saved money, and prepared for a new adventure. I opened a small creative consulting firm, combining my business experience with my rediscovered love for artistic expression. But here's what I learned about rewriting your life story. It's not about erasing the past. Every previous chapter, even the difficult ones, provided lessons that made me who I am. The key was learning to see myself as both the author and the protagonist of my story, not just a character being pushed along by the plot. Today, 3 years after that pivotal birthday, my life looks very different. My income is lower, but my joy quotient is through the roof. My circle of friends has changed, but the connections are deeper. My days are filled with a mix of challenge and creativity that makes me feel alive. The most beautiful part? Rewriting my story gave others permission to examine their own narratives. I've watched colleagues, friends, and even my sister begin to question the stories they've been living. It's like a ripple effect of authenticity, spreading out into the world. Here's what I want you to know. It's never too late to pick up the pen and start rewriting. Your past chapters don't dictate your future ones. The plot twists that await you might be better than anything you could have imagined, but you have to be brave enough to write them. Remember, you're not just the protagonist of your story, you're its author. And authors have the power to create new beginnings, unexpected plot twists, and beautiful endings. So I ask you, what story will you write with your second chance? Because the truth is, every morning when you open your eyes, you're given blank pages and a fresh pen. The question is no longer, can I change my story? But rather, what beautiful tale am I going to write today? Your story is waiting, and this time, you're holding the pen.